Right, today I thought I'd try and cover another one of the most common misconceptions that people appear to have about engines in general. Now, I like to watch a lot of videos on YouTube. I like to watch diesel, like diesel cold starts and things like that, and people with their trucks in America and all this rubbish, and a lot of dirt bike videos as well. And one of the most common comments that you'll get in most videos is, don't you know how to warm up a two-stroke? Don't you know how to warm up a diesel? And things like that. Now, so I thought this has led me to try and clear a few things up for anybody that may want to watch this particular video. All engines have, all petrol and diesel engines at the moment anyway, have pistons, and they have bearings and cranks such as these ones. This one is no good, but there you go. And also bearings here. Now, they all need to be warmed up. This also applies for small nitro engines, by the way. So all engines have to be warmed up, and they all have to be warmed up in a manner of which is quite slow, really, because if it doesn't matter whether you've got whether it's a single cylinder, in which case you'd have one crank, one rod, one bearing, obviously two mains, and a piston. And if it's a four-stroke, you'll have valves. Same for diesel, you'll have valves as well, and a camshaft with bearings and things. All bearings, all moving parts that need to be warmed up before they're, subjected to high revs. And you can have either one on a single cylinder, or you can have two. You have two cranks, two rods, everything just duplicated, and two pistons. All the way up to 6 or 12, you come right out here, you can have a V. It doesn't matter what you've got, diesel, petrol, two-stroke, four-stroke, or nitro, or even a gas engine, propane gas, LPG or whatever it's called. Doesn't matter, you've all got to warm up in the same way. Just because an engine happens to be a two-stroke doesn't mean you can't let it tick over to warm up. Now, I watch a lot of people where they're proud of their bikes, so they get them out and they start them up and they just sit there and they do it the right way. There's a lot of people that do it the right way, where they let it tick over, give it a small bit of revs, not a lot, till it warms up for 3 or 5 minutes, get enough heat in there before you go and ride it. Now, you get people comment on there saying, oh, you mustn't let a two-stroke tick over, you have to ride it straight away, don't let it tick over, because the oil can't get up and lubricate the piston. That's a load of rubbish, because for one thing, I've said it before, nobody would make an engine what can't tick over, otherwise it will become damaged. That's just a stupid thing. No one would do that. 2, you need to know how a two-stroke engine works. A two-stroke engine works by sucking the fuel from the crankcase upwards. So of course it's going to get plenty of oil in there ticking over. In fact, ticking over, you get too much oil. You get too much oil with a two-stroke going there, which is why it blocks up a bit, can foul your plug, and you get a lot of smoke. If you leave it ticking over for a while, and then you ride it or you rev it, you'll get a lot of smoke because too much oil has built up around the piston, on top of the piston, or just around there, because it hasn't been revving up to be burnt off. So no, a two-stroke doesn't require to be warmed up in any different way to any other engine. You start it, you let it tick over. Same happens to go for a four-stroke engine. Now these are different because they have valves in. Whereas a two-stroke engine, the piston is the valve as well. But with a four-stroke, you have an inlet valve and an exhaust valve, an inlet and outlet valve. And you obviously don't have oil in the fuel, you have oil in your crankcase. Or in this particular case, the gearbox oil is also the crank engine oil. Whatever. But you don't have oil in the fuel. So you can let a four-stroke engine tick over for as long as you like, and it won't build up, unless there's a leakage and you've got a bit of a problem burning oil. It won't build up any oil in there. And like I said, if you're going to let a two-stroke tick over, you can't really let it tick over for too long, because it will build up oil and it will get a bit blocked up. But as far as warming up goes, you have to let it tick over. But for a four-stroke, it doesn't make any difference. It's the same method. You start it up and you let it tick over. You don't have to rev it, you don't have to ride it or drive it. You just let it tick over for a few minutes. It's as simple as that. And it's because they've all got the same kind of bearings, they've all got pistons, everything's moving parts. I like to think of it as, if you can imagine this, right? You're in bed, you're fast asleep, just like your engine's been sitting overnight or for however long it's been sitting, right, on your bike or your car. So you're in bed, and then all of a sudden, you probably know what this feels like if you've been in the army. I've never been in the army, but I know roughly what it's like because I've got friends that have been in the army and they've told me. So you're laying in bed fast asleep, you know, all night you've been fast asleep, and all of a sudden at 4 o'clock in the morning someone comes up to you and starts hitting you with a stick or whatever, says get up, and you've got to just run. You've just got to go. You've got to go out and you've got to go on a run, and you've got to run as fast as you can, and you're still asleep, you're still sleeping, your eyes are all closed up, and you know, and you're fast asleep and you ain't got a clue what's going on, you know, and you ain't warmed any of your muscles up or nothing. Your muscles are all stiff, you know, you're running a danger of pulling a muscle and all that kind of stuff. Imagine your muscles are bearings or the same kind of thing. You could spin a bearing, you could break a bearing if you just don't let it warm up, if you subject it to fast RPMs when it's cold. Same as your muscles, right? It's all the same. Everything's stiff, it's exactly the same as you feel. So, you know, it's the same goes for a diesel engine. Now, I've seen also a lot of people, because I like to watch a lot of machinery being cold started in other countries and things, and people that have modified their trucks in America and all that, and you got a lot of black smoke and all that, and you know, people start them up and they let them tick over and all that, and you get people comment, oh no, it's a diesel, you have to warm it up in a certain way, you shouldn't just start it up and let it tick over, or you didn't let it tick over for long enough before you drove it, and things like that. Now, just because it's a diesel, oh, and they also go, it's diesel life. No, it doesn't matter. Diesel engine is the same as a petrol engine in the way of, it doesn't need to be warmed up in any particular way, right? Yes, diesel engines are difficult to start in colder weather. This is because the flash point of diesel is about 50 degrees. And the flash point for petrol is well in the minuses. You know, petrol will ignite well below -0 degrees centigrade, but diesel has to be quite a high temperature plus a bit of compression. You know, you can put a flame on some diesel and nothing will happen. But if you combined heat with compression, or in the case of a diesel, the compression creates heat unless you put a glow plug in there, and then that brings the heat, and then the compression brings up the the shock sort of thing, which makes it ignite. But once you've got your diesel engine started, you don't need to warm it up in any other way than you would a petrol engine. You just need to let it tick over for a few minutes, or if it's really cold, if you're in a cold country, yeah, need to let it warm up for a bit longer. But you don't need to do it in a certain way. So, you know, I still don't understand. You know, you've still got bearings. They're the same kind of bearings, probably a bit more heavy duty in most diesels, depending on the rating of the engine, the power of the engine. But you've still got bearings, and you've still got crankshafts, and you've still got pistons. So it's all the same. They're all the same equipment. Nothing is different really. So it all needs to be warmed up in the same manner. No engine is different in the way you need to warm it up. You can get something called a cold seize, which is as your engine is starting to warm up, the bore, which is around the piston, will expand, but the piston will expand with it as well. So it keeps that constant seal, and the rings will keep that constant seal around the bore, around the piston and the bore, between the piston and the bore. Now, if you start your engine up and you're revving it straight away and driving off or just revving it, it's going to get hotter a lot quicker. However, the piston and the bore will not expand at the same rate, and the piston can expand quicker than the bore, in which case it will obviously get stuck in there, and that's what you call a cold seize. That's another reason why you shouldn't rev an engine before you let it warm up, because you can do that. Or if it won't seize up, it will start cause some damage, because the piston will be bigger than the bore, and you could scratch it, you could do some damage, like what's happened here, and you can do all kinds of stuff. Same with a bearing. The bearing's going round, but if it's cold, you can spin the bearing, where this will be inside a case, and it can spin around and come uneven and things. Or if you've got a case of, I can't really do a good example here because this is a different type of bearing, but some of them you have, like if you can imagine this isn't one thing, like this is, imagine it's in half, and you've got 2 bolts here and 2 bolts here holding the top half down, and you've got shells on the top and on the bottom. Now you can spin those shells, one should be at the top, one should be at the bottom, but if they're cold and you spin it, they can spin around, and then they won't wear, that would just be wrong, they'll wear out quick, and that's what you call a spun bearing. So I hope I helped some of you, tried to understand that, you know, you shouldn't really believe everything you hear from idiots on YouTube anyway. It probably included me, you know. Well, who am I to tell the people what to do? What do I know? Nothing really. But what you need to do is you just need to just start your engine up. Use some common sense, right? If the temperature outside is ample, you know, 20 degrees or, you know, even a bit less, you don't need to let it warm up for a long period of time. 2 or 3 minutes is ample time. If it's really cold outside and it's winter and it's a bit snowy, you know, down to sort of 10 or 0 degrees or, you know, below that, then you're going to need to let it warm up for 5 minutes or so, you know, or at least until your temperature gauge starts to rise up. Or if you haven't got a temperature gauge because it's a dirt bike or something else, just give it about 5 minutes. It's common sense. That's all it is. And like I said, a diesel engine is no different to a petrol engine. A 2-stroke engine is no different to a 4-stroke engine in the way that you need to warm it up. You don't need to ride a 2-stroke to warm it up. You know, having oil not getting up to the piston when it's ticking over on any engine is a load of rubbish. No manufacturer would make an engine where the oil can't go up and lubricate the piston and the bearings and everything else it needs to lubricate when it's ticking over. It's ridiculous. They wouldn't do it for a start, and if they have done it, there's a mistake there and they need to rectify it, but they wouldn't do that. You know, engines are designed so that the lubrication is there to lubricate what it needs to lubricate in almost all conditions. So that's the way that goes. Now, for those of you that might be waiting for the competition giveaway thing, that I'm going to do quite a few of them, they are on their way. It's just I really haven't had the time to organise anything, to do anything. So, you know I said I was going to do it sooner, but I didn't expect everything that's been happening to happen. So there you go. But it's on its way. The competition's coming. I've got some stuff to give away. I've got a bike. I've got a toolkit. I've got a vacuum cleaner. Kirby. I've got Kirby to give away. And what else do I have? I can't remember. There's something else somewhere I'm going to give away. Anyway, so the competitions are coming. I didn't lie. So just be patient with that. And they're on their way, man.